Welcome to Math 31, Section 5.5. And in this section, we're going to be looking at fractions, decimals, and order of operations. Okay, the first skill I want to teach you is how to convert a number from fractional format to decimal format. And that's actually quite easy. It's just you interpret the fraction bar as a division. So since this is the first section that you're allowed to use a calculator, you simply go on your calculator, 3 divided by 16, and you'll get the display of 0.1875. So that's your decimal number that's the same value as 3/16. We'll do it again with this next one. Excuse me. 9 is the top, divided by the bottom, 4, and your calculator displays 2.25. So 2 1/4 is the answer, and you can actually think of that number as being a mixed number also, as 2 1/4. You remember you take the denominator times the whole number and then add the top, and you can see 4 times 2 plus 1 would give 9. So 9/4 is the same as 2 1/4. Okay, often you'll get repeating decimals when you divide, and this one we'll have to remember that it's negative, so we'll put that on there later. But 5 divided by 9, 0.5555, and repeating. Now the choices when it's repeating is you can state that it's repeating by putting a repetend bar above the repeating part, or you can round, and I'll round to 2 decimals this time. So the 5 in the 100th spot gets bumped up because of the 5 in the 1000th spot. Now, if you know how to type a negative number on your calculator, you can instead go -5 divided by 9. If you do it that way, you won't have to worry about adding that negative at the end. Okay, convert the following fraction to decimal format and then round to the nearest hundredth. You just 11 divided by 16 on your calculator. Remember, it's the top divided by the bottom. Gives 0.6875. And the instructions want us to round to the hundredths column. So we're going to look at this thing, and because of the neighboring 7, we're going to bump it up to an approximate answer of 0.69. Okay, the next section of your homework requires you to compare decimal numbers. And when you compare decimal numbers, you compare them from left to right. Any digits that match, you ignore. So this 3 in the whole number column, you ignore. You ignore the 0 and then the tenths column. And you finally settle the argument in the hundredths column. There's a 4 here and a 6 there, and since 6 is bigger than 4, or you could say it the other way around, we use a less than sign. 4 is less than 6. You ignore everything else. Okay, example F does essentially the same thing, but it requires you to know the meaning of this repetend bar here. That means there's a 3 next door. So if you carried this out to another spot, this problem would look like this. 0.33 compared with 0.34, and the disagreement in this hundredths column settles the argument. The first number is less than the second. Okay, I suggest if you've got numbers that you're trying to order from least to greatest, that you add digits so that they all have equal number of digits. These 3 numbers are now in the thousandths column, and you can just think of them without the decimals for a minute here. Since they have the same number of decimal places, just pretend it's 423, 440, and 419. So the numbers from least to greatest are the one that would be 419 if it were 1,000 times bigger. And then the next one would be 423, so that first decimal number is the next biggest, and the biggest of all 3 is the one that would be 440 if you ignored the decimals. And you just put a less than sign and a less than sign, and that indicates that the one on the left is the smallest of all of them, and the one on the right is the biggest of all of them. Okay, now we're going to get into the order of operations in this problem. We have in the middle here a multiplication. It's not shown, it's just indicated with the parentheses back to back. And later you have a subtraction, and multiplying is done first. So you multiply 4.6 times negative 2.3 on your calculator. Write down the rest of it, and now you do the subtraction. Negative 10.58 minus 2.7, and the result is negative 13.28. Okay, exponents is a higher priority than adding, so you're going to type parenthesis negative 0.4 parentheses squared. In other words, you're going to make sure that the negative is inside the parentheses, otherwise it doesn't give you the answer you want. And after you've done the exponent, the addition gets done. Add those two numbers and you get 5.36. And again, your calculator can assist you on this. Okay, this one here, we're supposed to multiply these all out, but what we have here is a fraction and some decimals, and it's better to just do decimals. So I start this problem by taking the 3 divided by the 4, and it gives me my decimal equivalent. So instead of 3/4, we're going to write 0.75. Okay, the parentheses gets the highest priority here in the PEMDAS world. Parentheses first, exponents next. That's what PEMDAS is all about. Okay, so I subtracted first, and that's where the 4.3 came from. And now you multiply those numbers. Okay, a little bit of geometry here. We've got the area of a triangle in this problem. The area of a triangle, you can Google it, is 1/2 of the base length times the height. So in this case, the 1/2 I'm going to write as a decimal. You could do 1 divided by 2, but I think you know it's 0.5. And then the base length is 13.4, and the height is 6.2. Now we just multiply straight across from left to right. The first two numbers multiply to give 6.7. And finally, we multiply by that remaining number, the 6.2, and you end up with 41.54. And that area, since the lengths are in meters, the area is in square meters. Be sure not to read that backwards. It's square meters, not meters squared. Okay, we have a fraction up in the top here, so I'm going to convert that to decimals, so it'll make it easier. 3 divided by 5. Your calculator should display that number. All right, now that we know the length and the width, the area of a rectangle is always the product of the length and the width. So we will multiply the length times the width, and we'll be done with this problem. Multiplying 1.4 times 0.6 is 0.84. And the units of length in this one are kilometers, so this is square kilometers, like that. Okay, we have one more here, and this one we're going to start by substituting the values of 4 for x and 1.2 for y. So we'll take where it says x, we'll put 4, and then for the y, we're going to put the 1.2. The highest priority in this is not, well, you should be able to visualize this. There's a multiplication right there, there's an exponent right there, and a subtraction at the end. The highest priority is to do the squaring, so you're going to go 1.2 times 1.2. You should have a key on your calculator for squaring things, if you prefer to do it with that key. Next is the multiplication, so 4 times 144. And last of all, you subtract. Okay, so that does it for section 5.5, and we got quite a variety in there, but you got some converting from decimals or fractions to decimals, and we had some order of operations and quite a number of things. So I hope this helps you.